So before we get into it, I have something to address. If there's one thing I learned from doing these YouTube videos, it's that I don't know what the fuck genre I'm making. For my ISO remix, someone said it's not hard wave. Fair enough. For my breakbeat video, someone said it's not breakbeat. Also fair enough. Guys, I don't know. I'm just a guy that makes music. I guess this is kind of color based, right? Like, it's also just kind of like not. I don't know. Here we are. Let's get into it. Today we're going to be looking at my I Remember remix I did with Thresh. This is our third remix together, actually. We did one of Faded by Zoo and one of Gold Dust by Dr. Fresh. Those both did really well. They got played out by Excision and a couple other DJs, which is pretty crazy. So, you know, we had to team up, do a little rerun. If you only care about the drop, you could skip ahead. I'll go over that in detail, but I'm going to start with the intro for this track, kind of set the stage here. So first things first, we got the acapella here coming in.
In the past,
Faded in with the auto filter as this intro part progresses. I'm giving it a lot of space with this, dude, I fucking hate Thresh, man. He literally took my rack and then renamed it. All right, buddy, let's just go ahead and fix that because this guy's a thief. Yeah, I mean, you guys have seen this before if you see my videos. This is like the old version of my clean space rack. We're just adding delay and reverb while sidechaining to the actual vocal. So it's like not playing. When the actual vocal is playing, it'll kind of boost in volume here in these gaps. Keeps it really clean. With that is going to be these awesome chords. Shout out Cascade and Deadmau5.
This is my fucking shit. This is what I do with my life, you know, and here I want you to have this. Now for some little bitch to fucking come out and go, hey, baby, where are you now? And then fucking have that whole product basically.
Slowly opened up with just an auto filter. Kind of crescendoing up to this point. At which point I have a little fill. As you can see here, we're going into a big explosion. Just your typical like super saw sounds. If you know me, I'm not the biggest fan of using super saws, but honestly these chords sounded so good to not use them. Now we got a little ARP layer. So this one's also a chord layer, but it's more of a staccato note one. So yeah, those are all going to be in this little intro group, and I'm doing a little bit of chorus just to give it a little width and phasiness, I guess. Bit of EQing and reverb. We scroll up here, it's going to be like your typical background stuff. I won't spend too much time on this. Couple of pads here, a few here that I made out of the vocal. And then from Labs we have this.
all to the time that you know.
So before we get into this kind of big explosion part, a couple of sweeps and fills to get into that little drum fill. And then we just got some toms. Pretty much ready to get into the next 16 bars here. And this is a pretty long intro before we get to the drop, just because before we get to that build-up vocal part, you know, they got a lot to say apparently, so we're just gonna roll with it. One more thing I'd like to mention. Right here in the bottom left, kind of a helpful tool. The top waveform is the mono signal and the bottom waveform is stereo, so you could see in different parts, or you know, when I solo things specifically for different sounds, how wide it is pretty much, which is just a cool visual thing to look at. So for this big explosion, I need to stop saying that, but if we look at this whole synth group, all this auto filter automation is what's creating that movement. And for that last part there, it is this shifter, the dry wet going up just a little bit. With the spread going up too. And that is just kind of matching what the vocal's doing here. I have a little background layer too. automating the formants to just go up and down, make it a little more interesting. Little background layer. That's our main one. Similar here with the pad group. And while the saws are really carrying the energy of like, you know, the progression, these are all kind of holding one note and are just meant to be interesting in the background kind of deal. And then while all that's going on, of course, we're going to have some like big drums. Of course, transient shaper on it. Crash hits on each of the kick hits. If we listen to it all now. For that second 8 bars, it's going to be in this 1/8 note pattern. And that's thanks to this auto pan that has been secretly kind of coming in for that second part of the first 8 bars. And that like shift or fill in this part helps hide this transition, so when it comes back, you know, it's in that pattern. We're also gonna have this snare chop going. Got a little clap starting to come in here. Kind of sneaking in is gonna be some little risers and stuff. Yeah, so now we're ready for the build-up. Let's go ahead and just play that. It is a 16 bar build-up, which I never do, but like I said, these vocals were long as hell, so just kind of went with it, tried to match the energy. Ha! Get edged. First 8 bars is just this kick with a clap under it. Very simple. And then for that second 8 bars, less aggressive kick that's just being faded in. And with that, we're adding this snare riser. Gonna go up in frequency. And really getting rid of almost all of it by the end of the build-up. On the sidechain group as a whole is going to be like some reverb and EQ, just squeezing it out. And then yeah, that little transition fill there. Just a tape stop. While we have some risers, you know, kicking back up. And yeah, this is a lot of risers, but you know, when you're doing a 16 bar build, you really need to keep the energy somehow, so this is a good way to do it. So yeah, our chords are gonna start to fade out. And then here is a resample from the drop. So this is our drop basses, and those are gonna fade in. One thing to note is I turned the width down by 50%. See, because it's a pretty wide sound, so I don't really want to give all that away just yet. And that goes all the way up until the drop. For that second 8 bars of the build again, we have a sub riser. Well, it's a sub drop and then it's a sub riser, and that's just thanks to this shape that I did here. Pretty beefy sub, honestly, but as you can see, we're taking away the lows. Alright, so let's get into the drop. This is what everyone cares about. Now, while I'm here, just real quick so I don't forget, kind of a cool transition element to go from build to drop. So that note, right? A cool trick you can do is to take the last note of your vocal and just turn it into a pad. So that would be this one right here. As you can see, I mean, I just put that in granulator on that one part of the vocal and froze it. and did a little bit of EQ. So now this is going to go the whole drop as kind of like an accent note. I'm going to start with the drums. So for this type of style, the drums have to be smacking, all right? You're going to want a beefy kick, but not too long, because we're at 145 BPM. We have quarter notes. We need space for the actual basses. So you don't want a kick that's going to take up, like fucking 3 seconds worth of sidechain. Kick here, we got Trusty Biden. He's doing work out there. Of course, Transient Shaper. Honestly, cranking that shit. Snare, dude. I don't know, bro. Rhythm. Literally no effects on it. This is the same snare we use in our other 2 remixes. Perk group, really simple stuff. Some hat loops, ride, crashes. A little impact for the turnaround. For that second part, it's just this little fill from probably my sample pack, I think. Yeah. Really nice, really aggressive little fill there. And then we're just going to have an extra hat coming in, doing a slightly different rhythm. But again, really simple stuff. All right, so we're ready to go into the sidechain group. This is the good stuff, finally. I guess since we're already looking up here for that turnaround, just a couple little fills. And I'm reverb throwing it, as well as a little auto pan to give it some, movement. But yeah, let's start to get into the good stuff. But the synths group is what we care about. So first thing is we do have the vocal playing during the drop. If we turn off the effects, with all this stuff, it's really in your face. For our intro group, nothing except for the second 8 bars, I just brought the art back in, as well as used it to kind of outro out of the drop. But really just a fuck ton of notes arping out. But yeah, here's like our main synth group for this drop. And yes, I will get into the processing of the whole group, because that is pretty important for this style. So you're going to want some chord stacks. So these are pretty simple. Just like normal super saws. This one is a little more distorted, a little more mono. Pretty similar to the last one. And then this one is, I think, the best one, and like the one that gives it the grit. And if you look at the little visualizer, this is just extremely wide. Like the side information is as loud as the mono information. For the second part, I just bring in a little lead. Okay, so I guess the 2 layers that we should focus on the most is this one. And like that's pretty much almost a mid bass, it's very gritty, very in your face, aggressive sound. But then from the mid bass group, here's what they sound like. And I'm sure you could hear that one color bass layer that we're gonna get to, but the first one here, like a pretty wide type of saw sound for your low mids. Another very similar one, but see how much more mono this one is. So this one's working on the outside, and this one's working on the inside of the kind of ear space. And then this one, definitely the most important one. And like if we turn off the vocoder, I mean, it literally sounds out of key without it. But yeah, this is just like a bass one shot. I liked that it had that tonality already there, and I liked that it was already pretty gritty, so it just kind of slotted right in. And I think, obviously everyone's seen this trick before, to use a vocoder or put it on a bass and route it to one of the chords. Like, everyone knows that. But one important thing is when you're choosing which chord to take your signal from in the audio from here. I went for the grittiest one, so it was this one, remember? Because if I went for a different one of the chord sounds, like this one for example, and it doesn't have nearly the same energy. Or let's try this one for example. Again, like, yeah, that kind of has that, that color-based aspect to it that we know from using a vocoder in this method, but grabbing it from your grittiest layer, I think really helps make the difference. And then for the sub, got a couple layers. The low end one, really don't want any of the mids from that. And then high end sizzle one, just grabbing the tops. I don't even want any of the mids because we do have such a large mid bass. And if we look at like the EQ, like I want my sub to basically be, I'm gonna run out of EQ points, but I don't want any of this stuff from my subgroup because I'm getting it all from other sounds. And if we look at it, it'll probably look kind of like that. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much empty here, which is getting filled up by these boys. This remix, the song is in B minor, I think. B is not an ideal subnote at all. Like, that is super high. But putting this, it was originally, like, in the original song, it was down an octave to B -1. And that just does not hit the same. I mean, you probably can't even hear it. It's like empty. So we just, well, it's not ideal. It's only for this one bar. So we toss it up and then it gets into more normal notes. And then it actually goes back to a B, but we left this one at the -1 B because it's like kind of at the end of the phrase and the energy, you're kind of resetting it for the next part anyways. So it just made sense. A little sub drop for the turnaround. And then nothing in the vocal group because I had the vocals in with the synths group to kind of crush everything together. Now let's look at some of the group processing because it is pretty important for going for like this super aggressive type of color bassy sound to really just crush everything together. The sub, not so much. I want a clean sub always, so that's gonna stay the same. All we're doing here to get the rhythm is a utility. And you'll notice how I don't actually go all the way down to -infinity because I want the movement, but I don't want it to be too choppy, doing like little variations like this. It'd be a little interesting. So the sub is left alone. It's not part of the synth group. The mid bass is glue compressor, which isn't even doing anything until drop 2. Multi-band compressor doing a lot. The wider I threw on for the second drop because I have some different mid basses here. This is more of a future bass type of drop. To be honest, I basically templated my How to Fly remix, so I already have a video on that if you're interested. I'll touch on it in a bit, but I won't really go into detail on that drop. But yeah, just some EQ work. I'm thinking of all my groups as like a unit. Obviously I EQ individually, but I think of the groups as a unit. So this is the mid bass. What do we want? What do we not want the mid bass to interfere with? Definitely not the sub. Definitely not the chords. We want these to kind of work together. And then also you got to think about the chords then versus the vocals. Because the chords and the vocals are going to be kind of in the same area too. So that's kind of how I think about it in terms of group processing when I'm doing these EQs. So the chords group, super simple, just a little bit of wider. Not doing too much, honestly. I have some more individual processing, which I'm not going to unfreeze because my CPU will die. And this one is just automated for the second drop because, again, it's a bit of a different sound. So, wasn't exactly a one-size-fits-all with this EQ. Sometimes you got to do different things to different sections to make it fit together right. But that's the chords. And then the most important processing is going to be on the synths group. So this is the vocal, the chord stacks, and the mid basses. So if we scroll over, we started off with some glue compression, squeeze everything together. Multi-band compression, I put the time all the way up I want it to compress the tails of the sounds really quickly. And then this is huge right here. This is what's giving it that kind of phasey sound. And if you've seen my videos, you've seen this trick before, but this is, if we take this off here and then on, and if I crank the dry wet, I was just kind of messing with there so you get the idea of what this does to the sound. So the way I landed on 2.41 hertz here is because we're doing a quarter note rhythm. So I basically want each of these, like each of this phasey effect to last one quarter note. If you highlight any amount of length in Ableton and then you look in your bottom left, see how it says 414 milliseconds. So that's the duration of what I've highlighted. Then you go to like, just type in like hertz to milliseconds, and let's swap these. Sorry, we'll put in 414 milliseconds. That's equal to 2.41 hertz roughly. It doesn't have to be exact. And so with this, I know that the length of like that phasey wash, like the whoosh sound, is going to be roughly each of these notes. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. So that's kind of the best way I've found to get that phasey effect to be consistent if you have a specific rhythm you're going for. If I kind of crank this to like 11 or something, or 12, and I play this, it's still cool, but you can tell that it's kind of doubling or tripling every hit, you know. Rhythmically just makes a little more sense to me. And then, you know, for stuff like the turnaround, I automate it to go from pretty high, also a little bit of the dry wet to give it this kind of effect. And if we just accentuate that a little bit just to show. Pretty cool. You can get really creative with that, and I've been loving using Shifter ever since I kind of realized you could use it for things other than just 100%, you know. So that's my long useless spiel about that. Anyways, then we got an EQ and this little synth rack I made. It's super simple. I just use it a lot, so I turned it into a rack. But having a reverb always on the whole drop on something like, I don't know, between 1 to 2.5 seconds really helps put the whole group into a certain space. Sometimes I'll go as high as 20%, you know, for this one only 10%. It's just whatever works. And then I do have a second reverb later down the line to do like throws at the end of each phrase. And then a little tape stop, which was for that build-up part. And then finally the same LFO as the subgroup. Again, not going all the way down to 0, just negative 35. Without that rhythmical element, I mean, it's pretty lame. You definitely can hear that phasey aspect a little better when I turn the LFO off and the shifter, but when they work together, you can get a really cool, really wide sound. And then this second shifter is just for the second drop. I did like a little fade out situation here. This time on ring mode, has a completely different characteristic to it. And then, yeah, I mean, this is like pretty basic, kind of boring stuff. It's just like little risers and basses here and there. I kept the breakdown of this song pretty simple because we've been high energy for a while with that really long build up and then pretty aggressive drop. So it's a pretty chill midsection here. And then we're going to go into a very similar build. One addition being some break drums. But then drop 2, like I said, is very similar to my How to Fly remix. Here's a cool tip, and this is what I did to get it to sound very similar. So I knew I really liked what I did in that project. You can drag projects to your sidebar right here. So I dragged in my How to Fly flip, and then I literally have the whole project file right here in my sidebar. And then let's say I really like how I did the drums in that group, so I just open up this. These are all the groups you have. Open up main drums, and I could literally just drag the kick right into this project. And there you could see it dragged it right in with the exact same kick, exact same effects, even the same automation. Here, I'll just play this drop out really quick, so go from here. So grabbed same kick and snare, like I said, from that How to Fly remix, which I have a video on if you're interested. Again, same thing I did in that remix, just using pads that are made out of the vocal. We're already here, so we'll just go over really quick. Whole bunch of leads. Use different notes for different lead layers, so do like one main one and then a couple of harmony ones. And also for this one in particular, the use of pitch bends, like all this automation is pitch bending. Keeps it a little interesting, a little fresh. And here's another use of that sport synth group I was talking about. Okay, so the one I showed earlier had a few of these things removed, but this is like kind of the real one I've been using. So it's going to be a compressor, wider, pretty low amount, but widening things up in this leads group. Camel Crusher on British Clean, really sick. Gives it that fuzz. Again, reverb on the entire group. Pretty low dry wet, but a decently long decay, putting it all in the same space, making it full and epic. Another one later down the line for throws, didn't really do any for this drop. And then just a couple of EQs. Same thing as drop one, we got our chords. No LFO on them. A little different mid bass layers. And yeah, like I was talking about earlier, even though it's in the same song, you know, you gotta EQ different parts differently to make it all fit together. So here I just have automated, you know, this 6th point down 2. And then for the sub, it's just gonna be the low end one, not the high end sizzle. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's like the vocal comes in here for this little turnaround. And that's pretty much it. If we could look at the master, it's the same as usual. You got a Pro Q, cutting under 20 and above 20K, and then like a little mid side, no sides, under 220. Linear phase mode, utility for the buildups to just bring it down and then right back up. And then a G clip to top it all off. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned something. If it was, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to see next. Go listen to our remix. And yeah, thanks for watching.